Hello all, this is Anis with you. Welcome to my channel. In this ASP.NET Core tutorial, we will see how to create an inventory project using ASP.NET Core MVC. Let's see the demo of the module which we are going to make in this video. This is the part 2 of the project Inventory Manager. Let me show you the unit module demo. Let's create a unit to check its functionality. First, click the Create button. Then enter 3 pieces set for the name text box of the unit master creation screen. And then enter 3 pieces set for the description text box of the unit master creation screen. Now click the Create button to create and save the unit. That's so easy, isn't it? Our unit is saved to the DB. Now we will see the edit screen of the unit. Click the edit button of the unit with the name as 3 pieces set and having the unit ID as 5. This is the edit screen of the unit. This screen is so similar to create screen of the unit. In here, remove the blank spaces from the name text box of the unit. And then click the edit button to save the changes. Well, the changes are updated to the DB. Before I start, I would appreciate if you would like and subscribe to this channel so that you will be notified for all of the new videos that I will be posting. I am taking lot of efforts and spending lot of time to make all these videos. In return, I request you to subscribe to this channel. So please subscribe and share this video. Thank you. Okay, let's continue the video now. Start Visual Studio 2019. Then click Create a New Project. Scroll and search for ASP.NET Core Web App using Model View Controller and then click to select it. Then click Next to proceed. Give a directory location to save this project. I am saving this project in the folder named Codes by Anis, which is in the D drive. Enter the application name as Inventory Beginners. Hey, it does not mean it is only for the beginners. It will be very useful for intermediate and even for the experienced programmers. Then click Next to proceed. Now select the target framework as .NET 5.0. This is the current active version as of this recording. Leave the authentication type to none. I was showing the login and register screen in the introduction. Now I am leaving the authentication to none. Listen, creating an application with authentication from the startup is easy and scaffolding task does all work for us. So I don't want to follow that. The tough job is to add an authentication to an existing project. So we will add few modules first to the project. Then we will add the authentication. Is it sounds well? I hope so. Click the checkbox Enable Razor Runtime Compilation to checked status. And then click the Create button to create the project. It may take some time for the scaffolding task to complete the job, so be patient. Now the scaffolding task is completed and the project is created. In here, it is prompting you with the available publishing options. Of course, we will publish this project in the Azure, but that's going to happen in the later stages and I will definitely make a video on it. For now, just click Cancel button. Let's open the Solution Explorer to go through the directories and files created by the scaffolding task. Build and run this project. Here we got the default homepage, which was scaffolded by the project creation task. Let's stop and go to design screen of the project. For this application to do the database related tasks, we need the Entity Framework Core. So first we will install the Entity Framework Core for SQL Server. Click Tools, select NuGet Package Manager and then select and click Manage NuGet Packages for solution. In here, click the Browse tab. In the search box, enter EF Core SQL Server. There it is. Select Microsoft.EntityFrameworkCore.SQL Server. In the right side, click the checkbox near to Inventory Beginner and then click Install. Notice the version of EF Core. The latest version is 5.07. And then click the Install button to start the installation of EF Core for SQL Server. In case if you are prompted with the Preview Changes dialog box, press OK to proceed. And then press I accept button in the license acceptance dialog model to proceed. Now the EF Core for SQL Server is installed. Then we also need to install EF Core Tools library. Enter EF Core Tools in the search box and then select and install Microsoft.EntityFrameworkCore.Tools. Press OK in the Preview Changes dialog model. Then click I accept button in the license acceptance dialog model to proceed. Now our project is ready for developing the inventory manager software. Let's start the development. First and foremost, we have to create the models for our application. To create a model, right click the models folder, then click new item and enter the model file name as unit.cs. Then add a property named ID. This will become the primary key of our table. Now add a property named name of a type string. Basically, this property will have the name of the unit. Then add the string length attribute to the head of the name with the length of 25 so that the unit name can accept only 25 characters maximum. If we don't add this, then the Entity Framework Core will create a column with a data type of nvarchar max, which is not a good practice. Notice we have got error indicators below the string length attribute. This comes because we have not added the data annotations library. So add system.componentModel.data annotations to the using section as shown. Then add the required attribute to the head of the name property. And then add a property named description of type string. Basically, this property will have the description of the unit. And then add the string length attribute to the head of the description property with the length of 75 so that the unit description can accept only 75 characters maximum. Make this property also a required one by adding the required attribute to the head of this property. Now the first model of our inventory software is created. So far we have installed Entity Framework Core and then we have created a unique model. Entity Framework Core, otherwise called as a EF Core, is an ORM. ORM means Object Relational Mapper, which stands between the business layer and the underlying database. To do all the database related operations, it requires an important class of type DB_context. If we are using EF Core in the project, then we must have a class inherited from the DB_context. So let's create the DB_context class. Create a folder named data. Inside the data folder, which we just created, create a new item of type class and name it as inventorycontext.cs. This is going to be our DB_context class, which will mediate between our project and the underlying database. This inventory context class must inherit from the DB_context class. Notice we have got an error indicator line below the DB_context. This is because we have not included the Entity Framework Core namespace in the using section. So let's include it. Now the error got disappeared after including the required namespace. Type CTOR double tap to create a constructor. Now we need to pass the DB context options to the base. This options parameter will carry many things like connection string, service lifetime, context lifetime, etc. But mainly we use this to pass the database connection string. After that, type prop followed by tab key 2 times. This will create a default property named myProperty of type integer. Change this property to virtual of type dbset. Then pass the model type as unit to the dbset and rename the property names as units. This will become the table name in the underlying database. When EF CORE creates the database and tables, notice there is an error indicator under the unit. So to fix the issue, add the models namespace to the using section as shown. Now we have completed creating the DB context class. Now we need to connect to the database. For that, first we need to add the connection string. The best place to have the connection string is appsettings.json. So let's open appsettings.json. Now add a new section named connection strings in the JSON file. Careful with the spelling and syntax. JSON is not case sensitive, but I recommend to use the proper case as shown. JSON is a key value pair. My connection string key name is dbcon. I am using the standalone version of SQL Server, so I enter data source as local in the bracket. And then I entered initial catalog equals to codes inventory. Then I am using the integrated Windows login, so I entered trusted underscore connection equals to yes. Now save the appsettings.json. We are done with it. Then open the startup.cs. In the startup.cs, first and foremost add the required namespace like entity framework core and the inventory beginners.models to the using section. And then scroll down to configure services method. This is very important step. We would coming to this method so frequently to add any configuration parameters. We need to add the DB context to the service collection. To do that, type services.addDBContext of inventory context. Oh, I forgot to add the inventory context namespace. So let's add the namespace inventory beginners.data to the using section. Then pass the value to the options parameter, options lambda expression, options.use SQL Server. Pass the connection string to the options.use SQL Server. Our database connection string stored in the appsettings.json. To load the connection string from the appsettings.json, use the configuration.getConnectionString method as shown. Now our application is ready to connect to the SQL Server, and we have almost done most of the initial requirements here. Now we need to add the models to the database. These steps are called database migrations. Database migrations helps us to keep our models and tables of the database synced. Go to Tools and then select NuGet Package Manager and then select Package Manager Console. Now type add-migration within quotes initial DB setup. The name within quotes can be anything, but I gave initial DB setup to have a relative name. Now press enter to execute the command. Okay, now our first migration has been successfully built. Wait, it has not created the database yet. Instead, it has created the scripts in the migration folder. Let's see that. This script is lengthy and not an interesting one to spend time on it. In short, this script will create the table name units in the database. Now create and synchronize models with the database. We should run the command update-database. So type update-database and press enter as shown. The command update-database has been executed successfully. Next step is to create the controller. Let's create the unit controller first. Right click the controls folder and then click add and select controller. Then select MVC controller empty. Then rename the suggested file name to unitcontroller.cs as shown. Then click add. Now the controller is created. Let's add the required methods and properties to it. And then include the required namespaces in the using section. Declare a private read-only variable of type inventory context. In here we use read-only because the read-only variables can be set only once. So it avoids reassigning the value mistakenly in any other method. Now type CTOR followed by double tab key to create the constructor method. Add the parameter of type inventory context to the constructor method. Important point to notice here is the value for this parameter will be passed by the dependency injection, and the lifetime of this inventory context also will be managed by the dependency induction, and we don't need to worry about the memory leaks. We will see more about dependency injection in the upcoming videos. Then assign the value received from the context parameter to our read-only variable underscore context. Then add the system.collections.generic namespace to the using section. Now I have written the index method to fetch the units from the unit table. Notice it's showing red error indicator because I made a mistake. I had deleted system.link namespace from the using section. So let's include the system.link namespace to the using section. Now the error is disappeared. Next we need the presentation layer, I mean the view of the MVC. So right click the method name and click add view. Then select razor view and click add. Select the list in the action template selection box. Then select unit in the model selection select box. Select the inventory context in the data context class and press add button. Please wait for some time for scaffolding task to complete. It may take few minutes to complete. Now the scaffolding task is completed, creating the view file named index.cshtml. Now open the layouts.cshtml. Because we need to add a menu link to reference the index method of the unit controller. To do that, copy the li tag of the home link which is pointing to the index method of the home controller. Then paste the copied text below as shown. Now in the pasted text, change the ASP-controller to unit and change the text home to units. Then build and run the application. Now click the units menu link to load the unit listing page. Click the create new button. As expected, it is showing the page cannot be found error because we have not added the create method in the unit controller. I have opened the unit controller.cs and added the create method. Create action usually will have two methods. First create method, which will be called by the HTTP GET verb. This create will load the view file for the user to enter the unit details. Let's add one more create method. Add a parameter named unit of type unit model to this newly created create method. Then add the HTTP post verb attribute to the head of the newly created create method. Inside the create method, add a try block. In this try block, write code to add the received unit to the context.units. This will add the unit to the in-memory units collection of the DB context. Then type underscore contacts dot save changes. This will add the unit to the database table. Then add a catch block in case of any errors that will be caught by this block. In the last line of the method, call the redirect to action method with the parameter name of index. This will pass the control to the index method and we will be redirected to listing page of the units. This is the complete source of the create method. We will fill the catch block later. Next step, we need to add the view for the create method. Select the create method and right click the selection and click add view. Then select razor view and click add button. Then select the template as create. Now select the model class selection as unit. Click add and wait for the scaffolding task to complete. This is the view file for the create method which was made by the scaffolding task. Then I want to remove the h4 tag and the text unit and I want to change the h1 tag text to unit-create. Let's build and run the application. Click the units menu link to load the units listing page. Then click the create button. Let's add the first unit named pieces and click create to save the unit. Yes, unit got saved successfully. So our create method is working fine as expected. Just to save some time, I have added 3 more units of the recording which is listed here. Let's click the edit link. It is throwing us an error because we have not created the edit method in the controller so far. Now we are going to code the details method and edit method for the unit controller. At first we need to add the system.link library. So add the system.link namespace to the using section of the controller. And then add a private method named getUnit. This method is required to fetch the particular unit from the units table of the database. Add a parameter named ID. Notice if we want to fetch a particular unit from the DB, then we need to pass the unit ID. So it makes sense to add a parameter. Let's fetch the required unit using the where clause in the link query. Notice here we are calling the method first.default. This method will fetch the first matching record for our condition, and if no records are matched with our condition, then it will create a unit object with the default values and then return the unit object. It is a very simple method. Hope you understood. And then now we are going to create the controller action method named details. Create a public action method named details which will return the iAction result. This details method will take the parameter name ID of type integer. Inside this details method, declare an object variable of type unit and name the variable as unit, and then fetch the required unit by calling the method getUnit. Now return the view with the unit object attached to it. Notice there is an error indicator. Oh, it's my mistake. Remember that C# is case sensitive. So change the parameter name to ID, all in small case. Now the error has disappeared. And then add the view file by right clicking the details method name. Now select razor view and then select the details template from the template selection box. Then select the unit from the model class selection box and then click the add button to scaffold the details view file. Change the header part of the details view file to match our standard as shown. Now build and run the application. Click the Units header menu. Now click the Details menu. There it is, our details page loaded properly. Let's click one more time. Next, we need to create the edit method in the unit controller. So let's open the unit controller.cs. Like create, the edit action also has two methods. One will be called by the HTTP GET and the other one will be called by the HTTP POST. First, we are going to create the HTTP GET edit method. The HTTP GET edit method is very similar to the details method. So let's copy the details method and paste it below. Then after, change the pasted method name to edit. The HTTP post edit method is similar to the HTTP post create method. So copy the HTTP post create method and paste below the HTTP get edit method. Now change the name of the pasted create method to edit. In here, change the context.units.add to context.units.attach as shown. Then this is a very important step, so please pay attention. Here we are going to change the status of the attached unit in the context to entity state.modified. This tells the EF core that this entry needs to be updated. Then we have to call the context.savechanges to update the changes to the underlying database table. Now add the view file to the controller action method edit. Then select razor view. Now select the edit in the action template selection box. Then select unit in the model class selection box. Then select inventory context in the data context class. Now click add to scaffold the edit view file. This is the edit view file created by the scaffolding task. And then build and run the application. Click the units menu to load the units listing page. Then click edit to load the edit page of the selected unit. Now do some changes to the description of the unit, but remember the changes what you made. Click save to update the changes to the database table. Notice the changes are updated to the database. Let's make changes to one more unit item. Click save and notice the changes are updated properly to the database table. To verify, click the details and view the changes made by us. Now we have successfully created controller action method for create, read and update. Only the delete action is pending from the CRUD. So let's create the delete action now. Open the unit controller.cs. The delete action is similar to the edit actions. So we will copy both the edit actions and make the required changes to convert those to delete actions. First, copy the HTTP get edit action method and paste below. And then rename the pasted edit action method to delete. Now copy the HTTP post edit method and paste below. Then rename the pasted edit action method to delete. And now attach the unit object to the context object. Then comes the very important point to notice. Change the entity status of the unit object in the context to entity state.deleted. Then after, we need to add the view file for the delete action. So right click the delete action name and click add view. Now click and select the razor view. Then click add to proceed further. Select delete from the action template selection box and then select unit in the model class selection box. Then click add to scaffold the view file of delete action. Now build and run the application. Then after, click the units menu and click the delete link for one of the unit item. Here we go. The delete confirmation page is loaded. Here we have two options, either to delete the item or we can go back to the listing page. But I wanted to delete the kgs unit. So let's click the delete button. Notice the kgs unit item is deleted from the list. Let's delete one more item. This time we will delete the numbers unit. Now we have completed all the actions of the CRUD operation for the unit model. Hey guys, if you like this video, please subscribe and share. Definitely all your subscriptions and likes will motivate me to do more videos. Now the important things to follow. So please don't go away and continue watching. There are a lot of good programmers with excellent coding skills. They are ready to code more than 15 hours a day. But very few uses the design patterns. What are design patterns? Design patterns represents the best practices used by experienced object-oriented software developers. Design patterns are solutions to the general problems that software developers face during the software development. The confusion here is on choosing the right pattern. But today we are very lucky because our project mainly contains CRUD operations. For creating a CRUD operations project, the best pattern is repository pattern. What is repository pattern? The repository pattern is intended to create an abstraction layer between the data access layer and the business logic layer of an application. Repository pattern was first introduced in the year 2004 as part of domain-driven design, in short form DDD. The repository pattern is used to decouple the business logic and the data access layers in your application. In simple English, the purpose of introducing a repository pattern is program to an interface, not an implementation. This is a very important point. Second, hide implementation details. Then the third one is to create a loosely coupled software. In the screen, I have depicted two diagrams. The first one is without the repository pattern and the second one is with the repository pattern. Both works well. Then what is the difference? In the first diagram, all the business logic and database related codes are written in the controllers. What are the drawbacks of this approach? Assume if you want to make some modification in the user interface layer, still you need to build the complete application, which may leads to some new errors by accidentally deleting some working code. Second case, if a new member joins your team, you need to give the complete source code to him to understand the flow. Third case, if you get a similar project, then you need to copy the project and need to modify many of the places for your new client. Due to the few mentioned and many non-mentioned reasons, it becomes very difficult to maintain this project and it scales very poor. In the second diagram, which uses the repository pattern, notice the repository interface between the repository class and the controller. Let's discuss the same cases now. In the first case, if you want to make some changes in the user interface layer, go ahead and do it because you might not even have access to the repository code. You will be programming for repository interface DLL only. So even if you want, you cannot make any changes to the neither repository code nor repository interface code. So the repository code is completely safe from accidental modifications. Let's see the second case. If a new member joins your team, you don't need to give the complete project to the new member. If you want him to redesign the customer user interface, you can give the repository interface DLL and the customer interface module alone to the new member. using that interface, the new member can redesign only that module. Third case, if you get a similar project, then you can happily redesign only the user interface layer alone and can reuse the same repository DLLs with different database connection string with the cloned database. If you still getting confusions, no worries. Theories are theories. It is difficult to understand without seeing it in action. So far, we have completed creating CRUD operations for our unit module. Then we have seen what is repository pattern. Let's migrate our project to use the repository pattern. Open the Solution Explorer, add a new folder and name it as Interfaces. This is where we are going to keep all the repository interfaces for our project. Right click the Interfaces folder and then click New Item. Then select Interface in the dialog options and rename the interface file name to iunit.cs and then click Add to create the repository interface for our unit module. Then make the interface as public. Now add the inventory beginners.models namespace to the using section of the interface. Then after, let's add our first method signature named getItems to our iUnit interface. And then add the next method signature named getUnit to our iUnit interface. Now let's create the repository class. This class will have the implementation for our iUnit interface. Let's create a folder named repositories. Here we keep all the repository classes, I mean implementations for our repository interfaces. Right click the repositories folder and click Add and then click New Item. Name the repository class file as unitrepository.cs and click Add. Add the namespace inventory beginners.interfaces to the using section of the unit repository class. Then inherit the unit repository class from the iUnit interface. Notice we are getting error indicator below the iUnit interface. This is because our unit repository class has not yet implemented the method signatures of the iUnit. Click Show Potential Fixes and select Implement Interface. Now we got the default implementations for the unit interface. Then after, open unitcontroller.cs and copy the underscore context variable declaration completely. Please pay attention. We are migrating our project to the repository pattern now. Now open the unit repository.cs and paste the copied text. Notice there is an error indicator below the word inventory context. So click Show Potential Fixes and click Using Inventory Beginners.data. Then type CTOR followed by double tap key. And then now we add the parameter named context of type inventory context to the constructor method. Then after, assign the value of the context parameter to the private read-only variable underscore context in the constructor. Then after, open the unitcontroller.cs, copy the code of the index method and comment the code of the index method. Now open the unit repository.cs and paste the copied code to the getItems method. Change the return statement of the code to return the units because repository class should not return a view. Then open the unitcontroller.cs. This is an important step, so please pay attention. And then in the unitcontroller.cs, add a private read-only variable of type iUnit named underscore unit repo. Notice the error indicator below the iUnit interface. This comes because we have not included the repository namespace. So click Show Potential Fixes and select the first suggestion using inventory beginners.interfaces. And one more important thing to notice here is the variable underscore unit repo is of type iUnit and not of the unit repository. So this means at runtime we can push any repository class which implements iUnit interface to this variable using the dependency injection. Then after, add one more parameter named unit repo to the constructor method of the unit controller. And then assign the underscore unit repo equals to the constructor method parameter named unit repo. Then in the index method of the unit controller uncomment both the lines. Now change the first line to receive the units list from the getItems method of the repository interface. Here also we have no idea which repository class is going to serve us. Then after, open the startup.cs and in the using section include the namespace inventorybigness.interfaces and inventorybigness.repositories. This is an important step. Here we are adding the iUnit interface to the service collection and mapping unit repository to be served when it is requested by any object like unit controller. This will be taken care by the dependency injection. In case if we wish to provide a new implementation to the unit interface, we just need to replace this line with the new repository class which also has the implementation for the iUnit interface. Now our project is in hybrid mode. I mean the index method is using the repository pattern, other methods are using the non-repository pattern. But the beauty is both patterns share the same DB context. I have set an breakpoint in the index method. Let's run and see it in action. Now click the units menu link. The program has stopped at the breakpoint set in index method of the unit controller. Now press 11 to step through and see it has gone to the unit repository getItems method. Then again press the F11 and see the program flow is returned to the index method of the controller. The program works fine with the repository pattern. Click the edit link for one unit. Yes, edit is also working fine, but edit action method is still in the non-repository pattern. Let's add the remaining methods to the iUnit repository so that our project will use repository pattern for all the database related actions. Add create method signature to the iUnit interface. Notice now the unit repository is showing error indicator. Click show potential fixes and click implement interface. Then open unitcontroller.cs and cut the code from the create method as shown. Now open unit repository.cs and paste the copied code to the create method of unit repository.cs as shown. Then open unitcontroller.cs and in the create method add unit equals to underscore unit repo dot create of unit. Then build and run the application. Then click the units menu and click create link. Then add a new unit. Notice that we are using the repository pattern. The create action is working fine with the repository pattern. Let's convert details method also to the repository pattern. Open unitcontroller.cs and cut the getUnit method. Now open the unit repository.cs. Paste the getUnit method which was cut from the unitcontroller.cs. And then cut the code from the private getUnit to public getUnit method as shown. Then cut the parameter from the private getUnit method and paste it to public getUnit method. Then delete the private getUnit method. Now open the iUnit.cs and add the parameter named id of type integer to the getUnit method signature. open the unit controller.cs and locate the details action method. Then change the unit equals to underscore unit repo dot get unit. Now the details method also modified to use the repository pattern. Then open iunit.cs and add the edit method signature to the iunit interface as shown. Then open unit repository.cs and notice the error indicator below the iunit. Click show potential fixes and click implement interface. Then open unit controller.cs and change the HTTP edit method to get the unit from the unit repository as shown. Then cut the HTTP post method code from the unit controller.cs. Now open the unit repository.cs and delete the default implementation for the edit method. Then paste the HTTP post edit code from the clipboard and return the unit as shown. And then go back to the unit controller.cs. Copy the code from the HTTP post create method now. And then change the underscore unit repo dot create to underscore unit repo dot edit. Then locate the HTTP get delete method and change the code to use the get unit method of the unit repository. Now add the delete method signature to the iUnit interface. Then implement the delete method of the iUnit interface in the unit repository class. After that, cut the code from the HTTP post delete method of the unit controller. Open the unit repository class and delete the default implementation from the delete method. Then after, paste the copied code from the clipboard and return the unit as shown. Now go back to the unit controller and locate the HTTP post delete method. In here, call the delete method from the unit repository as shown. Then build and run the application. Now all the methods of the iUnit interface is implemented in the unit repository class. Our project is using the repository pattern to do any database related action now. So let's check all the actions of the unit module once. Click the units menu. The listing screen is loading properly now. Next, click the edit link. Change the description and press save button. Notice the changes. Now edit action is also working fine through the repository pattern. Next, check the delete action. Notice that now the delete confirmation page is loaded through the repository pattern. Press delete to remove the unit from the database. Now all the actions are working fine and verified. Still one small work is pending. This is a very important step, so please pay attention. Open the unit controller.cs and locate the read-only variable underscore context of type inventory context. Select and delete that variable. This variable is not required anymore by the controller. And also delete the context parameter from the constructor method. Finally, delete the underscore context variable from the constructor method and say bye bye to the context variable. With this, I am completing unit module of the project. We will see more in the next part of the project very soon. With this, I am completing this video. Before I sign off, I request you to subscribe and share this video. I would appreciate if you'd like and subscribe to this channel so that you will be notified for all of the new videos that I will be posting. Thank you and bye for now.